Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We're going to dive into the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. This somewhat at first secret society, their implement of how the world is been molded to this day thus far.
Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. Shaping the moral, spiritual, cultural, political, and economic decline of the United States of America. Up to that time, Tavistock had successfully retained its secretive role in shaping the affairs of the United States, its government and its people since its early beginning in London, in 1913 at Wellington House. Arnold Toynbee was selected as Director of Future Studies. Two Americans, Walter Lippmann and Edward Bernays, were appointed to handle the manipulation of American public opinion in preparation for the entry of the United States into World War I, and to brief and direct President Woodrow Wilson. From a somewhat crude beginning at Wellington House, grew an organization that was to shape the destiny of Germany, Britain and more especially the United States in manner that became a highly sophisticated organization to manipulate and create public opinion.
Funding was provided by the British royal family, and later by the Rothschilds.
Were commissioned by an elite organization called the Club of Rome.
The Club of Rome sounds like an Illuminati group.
Oh yeah, there are plenty of fun conspiracies about these guys. The Committee of 300 is a council that creates policy for groups like the Club of Rome and the Trilateral Commission.
Trilateral Commission?
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole. Now, it's been alleged that the Club of Rome supports massive depopulation using any means necessary.
Any means?
Any means.
There's a relationship between all of these so-called think tanks and mastermind organizations, and the Club of Rome, Committee of 300. They all have the same underlying thing, which is death and destruction.
All coming from eugenics, stemming out of Tavistock Institute.
Go to a new day. I communicate. Did it. Dash.
Hold up, wait a minute.
Hidden in plain sight.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. What's in your community, locally and globally? I'm Vessel 1 and with me Vessel 2.
Hey, quick question.
Is that hidden in plain sight?
Vessel 1, Vessel 2.
Talks about hidden in plain sight.
And with that, let's get into it.
Hold it now, wait. Ladies and gentlemen. Brothers and sisters. Do you know what time it is? What time is it?
It's been a long time. I was giving you time to get the last one straight.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there.
And welcome back, hipsters. And we're going to continue with the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. And we're going to, again, as last segment, we talked about the origins and how they came about and how they've been hidden in plain sight for all these years. And from John Coleman's reveal book that revealed them and what they're about. And from now, we're going to continue from the mid 1900s to all the way to 2023, where we're at now. And last, where we left off, we was talking about members or the Tavistock Institute, people that was associated with them, and that people that you probably heard of, and probably in your face, you just don't know their connection, and they have connection. Of course, some of the concept idea of the eugenics movement was very pushed through Hitler and funded by the Royal Crown and Rockefeller and the Bilderbergs. Along with that group, we got Klaus Schwab, George Soros, we got Prince Bernhard, we got Warren Buffett, we got Bill Gates, Jeffrey Epstein, and who else we have? Of course, the influencer, the ones that put it in action, Walter Lippmann and Edward Bernays. Vessel 2, anyone that you would like to add to this list
Yes,
that
sir.
I forgot?
You gotta put Kissinger on that list. Henry Kissinger.
Yes, that's correct. You're right. Yeah. That's coming from the American side, Kissinger. Um, Zuckerberg is another one. Also, we have Jeff Bezos, and he's very quiet about this, but he's there. But the ones that who funded a lot of these projects was George Soros and Klaus Schwab, and they had their reaches not only in Europe and America with the LGBT and Black Lives Matter, but also they had reaches, far reaches in Africa as well, and some of their money or their investments went into research and development and polling as well. So just to again put it out there, all this can be found on if you do the research. All this can be found out in Google. You can Google it, and it's all there. But His News is trying to bring it all together so you can see or witness where we at and where we have come from, or where we was going, and where we at now at this state of time. Yeah, and so again, Tavistock Institute was the foundation, and from the names that we named, they had created their agenda, and their agenda started off with eugenics, and eugenics lasted until about 1979, as the previous video stated, and from that point, we had abortion and birth control, or vice versa, birth control then abortion was another way they implemented their eugenics factor to get rid of any undesirables they felt that's uh, not positive for the earth or the planet. And we have now what's spent off of those ideas was the carbon factor. There's too much carbon now. They want to reduce the carbon. And as we know, if you, again, like Vessel 2 said, read between the lines, watch out for the hijack. Carbon, we all breathe carbon. So that includes you and I. So this is who they actually talking about. They want to reduce the carbon. They want to get rid of the people down, depopulate the society. Also, along with that, their a reason of too much carbon is what they say that it's climate change, climate control. Ice in the north is melting, and there's too much pollution. Again, this is all part of their scheme to depopulate. What Edward Bernays and Walter Lippmann was their job was to push these factors by social engineering or public persuasion, and you get most majority of that through the media, the news. So what you see on TV may not necessarily be the news for you, but the news for social engineering and public persuasion. So what they say, you tend to believe, and then you jump on the bandwagon. And again, they have brainwashed you to go along with their agenda to create a new world order. And finally, with the public persuasion, we now coming into the LGBT factor, which 20, 30 years ago wasn't nowhere near uh, in the mainstream or in your face as it is now. And they're trying to push for you to accept it. And if you do not accept it, then I guess a bad citizen, a no-no. You have some phobia. But so this is what they play out with that, along with trying to say that if you into the modern era, you woke. Vessel two, any input you would like to add?
Yeah, they mentioned in the video clip that Mr. Bernays is the godfather of propaganda. He was known
That's correct.
also to do commercials. So
Yes.
not only the news is a source of propaganda, but commercials as well, movies, anything coming out of the idiot box is probably detrimental to your own original thinking. So a lot of where we're at now came because of majority of Americans sit down and consume the propaganda through the idiot box.
That's correct.
And
Great statement. Mm-hmm.
with eugenics, it did reach outside of America as well. But yeah, we're focusing on America. And it's interesting, the video clip, they stated the number of how many people in California, how many Spanish people in California ended up being sterilized. And the focus now in California is giving reparations for slavery, but that state owes people for sterilization, I would assume.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Yes.
if the Europeans are mad about giving people reparations for slavery, then there's other means and other talking points that you can bring up that are more modern, that should be able to point out the wrongdoing, and you should be able to be correct. Those wrongdoings should be able to be corrected.
I agreed. I agree totally. Yeah, you're right about that. Great, great observation, and that's excellent point that you brought up. As far as the idiot box, yeah, again, like you mentioned before, you gotta listen to the words, the vocabulary that they're using. Whenever you watching TV, what do they say? It's a TV program. Again, they programming you, social engineering, brainwashing. And as you know, not to get off subject, but again, stirred out from the Tavistock, you had the brainwashing program in the 60s as well. We want to, just to put it there. They had the brainwash idea, So
That was
you-
the Mockingbird,
yes, Mockingbird,
Project
as well.
Mockingbird. They used the media
Parking
to
midnight, yeah, midnight, yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is all stemming from um the Tavistock and letting these guys run amok, and because they have money, they're easily to influence, most societies, with this money that they're throwing around, and they might tell you that they're there to assist or help you, but you know, you never get something for nothing, So,
right. And
yeah,
then you have to take into account also that um, there's corporations behind all of this as well.
right,
And there's a lot of corporations that have sponsored the propaganda. So
right,
they're in on it too. And off the top of my head, I know one corporation that was mentioned in the Mr. Coleman's audiobook. He went over a few different corporations, but I remember Xerox being one of them,
yes,
and
Xerox,
also IBM.
yes,
And
that's correct,
I
IBM,
believe IBM was how they were counting the Jewish people who were being prosecuted in Germany. It was their computer numbering system that counted everybody. So yeah, these corporations that are out here, and we buy products from them or we use their services, they might not be, they don't have our best interest at heart, a lot of them.
No, that's not. That's true. That's true. And just to add on to the list, you have Disney, you have Amazon, Jeff Bezos, you have they even have Apple, which is IBM, and that's in the pot as well. So this is just to name a few that that most people are engaging in, that have everyday dealing with these corporations, and they may not know their true intent of what they are about. Yes, great observation.
Along with also some university institutes, MIT being
Yes,
one of them.
yes,
That is a
yes,
set up propaganda organized institute. Yeah, this is, I
yes.
mean, I think Sean Anthony does a very good breakdown of this topic as well. But the the source of all of the madness stems from modern day source of madness stems from Tavistock Institute. But if you really
That's
look
correct.
at, if you go back further in years, this all stems from the discovery doctrine,
Right.
which was what, 1500s, 1400s, where
That's
the Catholic Church went out and said that the Europeans can go out in the name of God and spread Christianity.
yes.
This
That
is
is
the same mind frame that the Tavistock Institute stems from.
yes, that's correct. Yeah, but just as you were speaking, like Sean Anthony, um, the elder Robert X, something that he said stood out. You cannot talk about history without talking about these people. The secret societies or these Catholic knights or such that goes out and, like you said, in the name of God and spreading their idealism or what they have been taught or learned or brainwashed to believe to put in effect as well. That if you're not one of them, then you must be a foe. If you're not a friend, you're a foe, and
Right.
so they will, you know, do what they have to do. And yeah,
You have
it's
to be
deep.
down with their manifest destiny.
That's what they call it, manifest destiny, and that's what they name it. And yeah, it's yeah, yeah, it's so many questions, not enough time, so much content that we still haven't really touched based on, but we're trying to get as much as possible available to the public and to the listeners. What I'm going to really do right now, I'm going to run again with another Wi-Fi files, which is connecting from Tavistock to America again, and is talking about the Georgia, a little bit about the Georgia Guidestones, and that is, from what we've seen, is more malicious than what you tend to see. After that, Sean Anthony, and then we're gonna squeeze in Dr. Robert X. So here we go with the Wi-Fi. Oh, wow.
At first glance, some of these commandments seem fairly innocent and maybe even cliche. But when you take a closer look, the guides are unsettling. Some have claimed that the Georgia Guidestones are instructions for a new world order, an open call for eugenics, genocide, and a one-world government. But we're told this is all conspiracy theory, that there's no evidence to support these claims.
But there's evidence.
Oh yeah, plenty of it. But if you read them carefully, they're disturbing. Let's start with the first one. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. The current population is just under 8 billion people. To achieve the Guidestone's ideal population means that roughly 94% of people on Earth would need to be eradicated. And there are many people and think tanks that support this. On this channel, we've covered the Club of Rome, that defines itself as a nonprofit, informal organization of intellectuals and business leaders whose goal is a critical discussion of pressing global issues. Fine. But what the Club of Rome doesn't advertise so openly is that it was created in 1968 by the Morgenthau Group during a secret meeting at Rockefeller's private estate Bellagio.
Oh, here we go.
In August 1980, just a few months after the Guidestones went up, Howard Odum, a member of the Club of Rome, said it's necessary that the U.S. cut its population by 2/3 within the next 50 years. He didn't mention how this should be accomplished, but there are theories.
Ooh, I love theories.
I know you do.
But it does mean if you want the same standard of living, we're going to have to cut our population in the U.S., for example, certainly to 1/4. But that we have so many wasteful things that won't be hard.
You say it won't be hard to cut the population by 1/4?
It just takes one generation to get a population down if nobody bred for one generation.
You've probably heard of the Bilderberg Group. It was formed in 1954 as a way to prevent another world war. That's what they say publicly. So why are Bilderberg meetings so secret? Secrecy has created all kinds of conspiracy theories.
I love theories.
I know you do. One of these is that the Bilderberg Group believes that the current population growth is not sustainable. Allegedly, one way the Bilderberg Group would try to reduce human population is by causing pandemics.
Oh no.
The theory also says the Bilderberg Group will keep their true plan secret by consolidating all media to a handful of mega companies, and then use governments to work with these media companies on censoring any ideas that go against the group's wishes.
Ooh, that's not a theory, that's true.
Well, of course it's true. Just look at Twitter. Both Trump and Biden aggressively pressured Twitter into censoring any information that went against their agendas. But whether the Bilderberg Group is behind this or not is unknown.
Yeah, unknown only if you're a sheep.
And guess who writes the foreign policy for the Bilderberg Group?
The Club of Rome?
The Club of Rome. Now, it's been alleged that the Club of Rome supports massive depopulation using any means necessary.
But didn't we fight World War II over these ideas?
Well, funny you should mention that. The founder of the Bilderberg Group was Prince Bernhard. At the beginning of World War II, he was a Nazi SS officer.
Of course he was.
Now, to be fair, after Germany conquered France, Prince Bernhard switched sides and fought for the Allies.
Oh, so that makes him okay?
Hey, I'm just giving both sides of his story. But many people say that all of this is nothing but conspiracy theory, that the Georgia Guidestones don't want to reduce the current population, but instead are instructions for how to rebuild society after a cataclysmic world event. Okay, let's say that's true. How should the remaining survivors maintain control of the population? And who decides? The second Guidestone rule addresses this. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. R.C. Christian wrote a book entitled Common Sense Renewed, which he sent to each member of Congress in 1986. Among a myriad of statements, Christian wrote,
"It is vitally important that each national government have a considered population policy. The need is urgent and should take precedence over other problems, even those of national defense."
Okay, so he wants the government in charge. So what kind of people should the government allow to have children?
Responsible parenting will consider both genetic and environmental factors. We must seek to produce healthy children and then to mold their characters and to develop their potentials as socially worthwhile adults who will in turn carry the process indefinitely into the future. We have a grave duty to use all available knowledge in perfecting the forces which guide our procreation. It is within our power to leave behind us a new generation of humanity, slightly superior to our own in intellectual, physical, and social capabilities.
Yeesh, this sounds a lot like China.
Oh yeah, he's a fan of punishing people who want big families.
A few generations of single-child families will make possible dramatic improvements. Irresponsible childbearing must be discouraged by legal and social pressures.
Allowing only worthy people to reproduce to create a generation of genetically superior children? That's called eugenics.
Oh, so that's frowned upon, eh?
It is. It's what the Nazis did, or tried to do. It's also a war crime. But maybe not a crime at all in the New World Order. The Rockefeller that helped create the Club of Rome is the same guy who founded the Population Council in 1954. The Population Council supported, and still supports, research in birth control and early birth termination. specifically in those people with undesirable genetics. How do we know? Rockefeller said so.
Modern civilization had reduced the operation of natural selection by saving more weak lives and enabling them to reproduce, resulting in a downward trend in genetic quality. An organization needed to be created that would be devoted to the reduction of fertility of weaker individuals with undesirable genetics.
One of the members of the Population Council, as recently as 2020, has been accused of supporting forced sterilization. The council is still active today. It operates its programs in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. Notice that North America and Europe are not on that list. Now, maybe it's just a coincidence, but the council is focused on countries that are primarily non-white.
So that's another segment of this episode of Tavistock Institute. That's two. Any words?
And that was a good video clip. There's another breakdown of how this seems to be all targeted to the destruction of non-Europeans.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it can get deeper. Pushing along for time purposes, we're gonna go back to Floor Wisdom with Sean Anthony, and he's again breaking down Tavistock Institute and more or less the American side, which is Edward Bernays and Walter Lippmann.
In 1936, had came to the attention of what had become the Tavistock Institute. Because remember, it was the Wellington House. Now it's the Tavistock Institute. So the Tavistock Institute at this time was in preparation for changing and reshaping public opinion for the second time in less than 12 years. And this was by unanimous consent of the board. Now, Spengler's book was adopted as the blueprint for a new working model to bring about the decline and fall of Western civilization. Why? Why would they want to do something like that? To create and establish, pay attention, to create and establish a new world order inside a one world government. Create and establish a new world order inside a one world government. Guys, this isn't conspiratorial jargon I'm just fluffing up here, okay? I'm sharing the research, the documents with you, okay? So remember I told you that their blueprint was the book written by Oswald Spengler. In the context of what Spengler suggested, he looked at what they did historically with the Greeks and the Romans. The Greeks and the Romans were devoted to the social, religious, moral, and spiritual advancement and the preservation of womanhood. And they were deemed successful for just as long as they were in control and could arrange matters so that the government was carried out by a limited number of responsible citizens supported by the general populace, all being of the same pure, unadulterated race. Now, the planners at Tavistock saw that the way to upset the balance of Western civilization was to force unwelcome changes. Force unwelcome changes in the race by removing control from the deserving to the undeserving. You see? Now you could start to connect the dots and think about all the different things that have happened women's rights, gay, lesbian rights, integration, blacks integrating with whites, black man marrying a white woman and vice versa. These were things to set in place to disrupt the regime, to take down Western civilization. So by 1937, Tavistock came a long way from the Wellinghouse origins, okay, and the successful propaganda campaign that they had turned the British public from being, strongly anti-war in 1913 to being willing participants. How? Through arts of manipulation with the willing cooperation of news and communications media. Do you think that has changed? It was successful then. It's highly much more sophisticated now. What makes you think that they would turn their backs from what works?
Okay. We're getting close to the end. Festival 2, what say you?
That was very interesting as well. And I just want to point out that
yes,
this all stems from the Greeks and the Romans. That's what he said, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if you really are honest about the history of what has been presented to everybody so far, the Greeks ran into Africa.
Right.
They set up shop in Africa, and they prospered.
Right.
Africans basically are social beings, and they put their women not on pedestals, but their women had a lot more say-so than the average typical European woman did.
Right.
Right. So the Greeks ran into Africa, got educated on how to live. The Romans followed. They got educated on how to live. There was not a lot of homosexual activity in Africa, but that was part of their society, the European society.
Right.
So if the Greeks and the Romans both came into Africa and they prospered off of the teachings from the Africans, and they were successful in building their civilizations off of the education learned in Africa. So you would probably have to come to the conclusion, if you connect the dots, like Sean Anthony said, you have to come to the conclusion that their foundation is an African foundation.
Yeah.
Then
you could argue that.
Right. Then comes the new modern day Roman, which is the British.
Right.
Tavistock Institute are mainly the British thought tanks.
Right.
And they chose to undermine Western civilization, which originally was built on the backs of African knowledge on how to be civil. Right. In order to undermine that, they went and reverse engineered African culture.
There you go.
That's what I got out of what Sean Anthony just said. So they targeted race as the Romans and the Greeks. What they said were basically that their civilization thrived because it was all one race of people, one group of people, which that might have been true, but they were in Africa mingling with Africans. Right. So then you get a lot of mulattoes coming in Northern Africa because of the mixture between the Greeks and Africans and the Romans in Africa, right?
Right, right,
Then in
exactly.
America, it's taboo for whites and blacks to get along until Travis
Right.
Institute comes along and says, well, no, that should not be against the grain, but it's kind of reverse psychology. And
Right.
instead of, I guess, the common man not looking at it as a negative, they believed in the propaganda.
There you go. Social engineering.
Right.
That's it. Um, I want to throw the Dr. X in there really quick, and then after that, we'll finish up.
Because these Zionists are really Satanists. They don't like the Orthodox either. They use them just like us. All right? So these will be the people that would basically work with Hitler to identify who was Jews and who was not, as long as they were Orthodox. Okay? That's the transfer agreement. That's the transfer agreement. The rich Jews selling out the poor Jews and the Orthodox to the Germans. So the rich Jews get to leave Germany and go to Palestine. They don't like you talking about their history and what they did. Because, see, if you mention that George Soros worked with the Nazis, which he himself admitted that he did and had no regrets, that's mind-blowing. But that's the statement that he made. You have no regrets. You're trying to stay alive. So, yeah, that's bird bomb, and that's fish bomb, and that's rubbing bomb. Pick what bomb you want, Mr. Nazi. This is Soros. Okay? Anyway, I'm just saying that, but that's what he did. So Elon Musk basically points out that he's a demon, that Soros is a demon, and they call Elon Musk anti-Semitic, the ADL. But they'll call me an anti-Semite because I'm sitting here talking about stuff that they did and are doing. And it doesn't matter if it comes from Jewish publications or whatever. Don't matter. Because I got a lot of Jewish documentation. The transfer agreement was written by Edwin Black, who's a Jew. And when they run across one of them that exposed one of them, they just call him a self-hating Jew. But understand, they're not Jewish. They're Satanists. That's their religion. And they're going to transfer it into the technology. That's where we at now. So they come out and they're going to tell me that Jeffrey Epstein family set up Bill Gates, was blackmailing him. Who you think will swallow that? Quote, Soros reminds me of Magneto, unquote. Musk said on Twitter, quote, he wants to erode the very fabric of civilization. Soros hates humanity, unquote. The right wing has basically said that George Soros is a monster, and that's what he is, okay? And that he's financing all the disruption up to and including the disruption in the law apparatus that more than Elon Musk has now got the guts to say with these prosecutors who's been put in charge of children who've lost their parents in Ukraine. You see, it's all connected. It's all the same stuff being done by the same people. It is not one thing. But wait a minute. Bill Gates is connected to who? Jeffrey Epstein? And said he only met him a couple of times, and now we find out that it was dozens and dozens of times. And you mean to tell me Jeffrey Epstein had a pedophile relationship with young children, and children that people don't know about, specifically on that island that he had? Remember where he was talking about producing a whole army of little Jeffrey Epstein. Wait a minute, that's transhumanism. That's amazing. And then I can't leave out the so-called new king of the UK. Right? Ain't they pushing climate change? Ain't he on the executive board above everybody else on the World Economic Forum? Ain't he the head of the World Wildlife Fund out of the UN? The World Wildlife Fund is just another name for the eugenics movement. Wait a minute. Wasn't his daddy another pedophile? The former head of the World Wildlife Fund? Well, how long these people been in eugenics? Maybe since they were, in fact, acted and dressed the part, supporters of Adolf Hitler. Maybe that's why. Wait a minute. Wasn't Maurice Strong? Maurice Strong, family. Google the name. And he'll take you to the United Nations and the World Wildlife Fund. And you'll run right smack dab into the eugenics movement, of which another member and founder, one of the founders of the World Economic Forum was Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, okay, who just happens to be the daddy of the Bilderberg Group. Wait a minute. Global white supremacy? Is that what this is? Well, how about the Rothschilds being directly connected to Jeffrey Epstein? You see, all of this, I can take everything I just got through saying and connect it with the first central bank, which would have been the Bank of England. Okay? You can take it back to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Bank of England, which gave birth to the Federal Reserve. Rothschild, which gave birth to the Bank of International Settlements, which gave birth to the Nazis.
Okay, folks. Well, another episode coming to a head. I hope this episode was something that you learn a lot from, and if you're more interested, again, research. We have a lot of links in the source material below. I'm Vessel 1. We're Vessel 2 signing out. Vessel 2, give us your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Today's episode was a good episode as far as history, research, and the uncovering of why we're in the state and the condition we are in now. I don't necessarily want to say it's all one nationality's fault. We all have drank the Kool-Aid, and it's just wise, in my opinion, to be able to name sources and to be able to put names to the wrongdoers. So on that note, please stand on your square. If there is a wrongdoer in your vicinity, let them know that they're doing wrong. You don't have to confront them, but let them know. If there's a loved one that you consider to be a loved one, let them know as well. Until next episode, peace.
Peace.